Hey there, I want to walk you through 4 techniques to get great podcast interviews. I have done and hosted tons of podcasts. I've been doing it professionally for years and years, and I've really had some amazing interviews. And so I want to share with you just a few of the tips and tricks that I use to help guests feel more comfortable and to get more information and more great quotes out of them so that I can produce a great show and hopefully make them look amazing in the process. So here we go. First, this is by far the best thing I've ever done, and I stumbled into it accidentally. Telegraph your mistakes. As the podcast host, telegraph your mistakes. And here's what I mean by that. I always start a podcast telling the guest, hey, I'm going to read the intro and I'm going to mess it up. And just bear with me, just hold tight, because I'll probably mess it up 2 or 3 times. And then I'll get back on the horse and then I'll stumble through it and we'll make it great and I'll edit it out later. And this does 2 things. First of all, it sets the expectation that I'm probably going to mess up as the host, as the professional. So it's totally okay for them to also mess up and redo things. And that's totally fine. And 2, when I do legitimately mess up, it's not embarrassing, which is kind of nice because I do legitimately mess up probably more often than I'd like to admit. So that's tip number 1. Tip number 2, it's a recording, so mistakes happen, and make sure to remind them of that. Like, hey, we're recording so that you can make mistakes and so that you can redo different takes if you want to. And so it doesn't have to be perfect the first time because it's a recording and mistakes happen. So just remind them of that. It helps the guest to feel more comfortable. Next, tell them when you screw up, when you mess up, take a beat. So this is really important, mostly for your editors, for your podcast editors. So if somebody messes up and then they just immediately dive into the next statement and they kind of blur the lines or their sentences together, it's really hard to get a clean edit on that. So if you can tell your guest, hey, when you do mess up, when you realize you're going down a path that you don't want to go down, take a beat, pause, count to 3, 1, 2, 3, jump back in, and we'll just edit it out and we'll make sure you sound amazing. It just makes it much easier for you. And honestly, it gives them a chance to gather their thoughts. And last, and this is important, and I'll do a separate video about these questions later on, but master these responses. A lot of times in our interviews, we don't go deep enough. And so we can go deeper with just some very simple responses. When somebody makes a statement, say, what do you mean by that? And then they'll elaborate a little bit more. And then you can say, well, what do you mean by that? Or when you say this, what do you mean by that? And it just helps them to dig a little deeper into their own thinking and into their own mind and give you way better content, way deeper content. The next response is just tell me more. They say something, they kind of stop, pause, tell me more. I'd love to know more about that. Tell me more about it. They'll tell you more, and that's where the great stuff lies. Last, when this happened, how did that make you feel? A lot of times in podcasts, we don't really get to that sort of feeling response. We don't get to those emotions, but I think we should. And there's a lot of great content there. And so how did that make you feel? How did that affect you as a person? So these are just a few of the ways that I help guests to relax, to feel at home with me, and just, for us to have a great conversation and create some great content together. So if you liked this video, make sure to check out our YouTube page. Visit edgewise.media for more information about podcasting in general, and make sure you follow all of our social pages because we'll be creating a lot more content in the near future.